The title is The Goddess You Have Chosen First Chose You. And I use this way of writing goddess because, like Sun Dragon said, we had two parents. And I always believed in a spiritual mother. I never could figure out how there could be a father and a son, and the Holy Ghost, who knows what that, so I just call it mother, My father passed away at a very early age, and I was raised by my mother. And we are not getting into politics at all today. But I want to kind of give you an idea. Those of you who know, and as she mentioned, I am pretty much a goddess worshiper. I see God as mother, father, both parents. But where I got that from was pretty much my growing up background. Now I know some of you have seen, I'm pretty sure most of you have seen the Ten Commandments. And you remember Charleston Heston, this big, masculine, manly man in command of everything. One of the sons of Ramses. And there he was doing all these masterful things and showing signs of leadership. But when he became Moses, let's say, there he was on the side of this Mount Sinai, cringing, as God hurled all these fire bombs his way. Just balls of fire just shooting all over the place and spelling out the Ten Commandments. And here was this great big masculine man cringing aside the wall. Well, my thoughts were, he was the chosen one. And here he is afraid of this God of love. And there he was cringing, trying to keep from being, I guess, hit by one of these fireballs. Well, every time I went to church, there was this great big booming voice telling us, giving us commandments. This is what you do, and if you don't do it, one of these fireballs. I never knew when I was going to be hit by a fireball because I could never get together on what they were saying. I just could not buy it. I could not be at peace with it. Now, I know it was only me because everyone in the church was enjoying all of this, and here I was scared to death. So I finally decided this is not where I need to be. And I got up and I walked out and I never went back. Now that left the question of where I was supposed to be. And that took me to different religions, to different temples, ashrams, any place they would let me in. I'd go in there and sit and try to figure out what was going on. Did I belong here? And I didn't, because most of them were patriarchal and they were mostly talking about the father. And so I kept trying to figure out, where is the mother? Where do I need to go to find my mother? Not my mother, my earthly mother, but my spiritual mother. And one day as I was sitting in the kitchen, when we have family reunions, the men would gather in one spot, the teenagers in one spot, and the children in another. And the women would be in the kitchen preparing the food and getting ready for everything. And that's where I'd be. Because I love to hear them tell stories about their life. What had happened, the troubles they had gotten into, what they had done, how they had sneaked out. And I couldn't believe they could do all of that as strict as my grandparents were. But they were doing all kinds of stuff back there in the country, and I was honestly envious. I wanted to be where they were. And so they would tell me, you can go with the teenagers, you don't have to be in here. Oh no, I'm not leaving. I'm going to sit here and listen to everything you got to say. I want to hear this. And so that was where it occurred to me, I needed to be around women spiritually, because to me that kitchen was a sacred space. It was a place where I felt supported, secured, warm, energized, spiritual, everything I needed to be. So that led me on a journey again, but this time to find that place where there was woman's spirituality. And I ended up in a mystical bookstore, and they were having groups of people from different traditions, and they would have this discussion, mostly pagans. And I went in there and I sat down and I listened, and there were other traditions that I couldn't deal with, but gradually I began to seek out the women who had a group, and I got in touch with them. It was quite an interesting experience because it was not without cost. One of the girls who was explaining things to me was very earthy. Her windows were open, her doors were open, any creature that came in could come in, and any insect, she wasn't bothered by any of those. Well, I was a city girl, I wasn't used to all of that. So I was kind of, and she had all the paraphernalia she needed, but she was a high priestess, and she was a leader. And she was what I was looking for, the village or the person, the elderly lady who perhaps lived by herself, was content with herself, who was supportive of herself, could or could not be married, it didn't really matter. But she had self-confidence and a spiritual attitude that I was very, very interested in. And so I sought her out, and as we sat there one day during a discussion, a storm blew up. And things, with her doors and windows open, things started crashing off the walls and falling off of things, and I thought, boy, he's got me now. I shouldn't be here. I better get out of here. So I started, I left early. I kind of got out of there because that was those fireballs God was throwing because I was in the wrong place. But I couldn't stay away. I came back, and I kept coming back. And I kept coming back and learning from her and getting the spiritual nourishment I needed from a gentle, calm, nourishing voice. And so as time went on, I joined the group, and we would do public and private rituals, and we would follow the seasons. Spring brought joy, happiness. We dressed the part. We acted the part. We took on the attitude of spring. We became spring. And we would choose a goddess, perhaps. Persephone is always good in the spring. And we would play her role and become her. Some would become more, some less. But there was always this energy of newness, of vitality, of being able to win and play a child's role, whether you were 20, 10, or 90. You could still be that virgin child, that innocence. You could still possess it. And that gave you something of a freedom that you don't necessarily enjoy because there are rules about what you do at certain ages. And at this age you do this, and at that age you do that, and at that age just get out of the way. So I found a great comfort in that. Then there was the mother. If you follow the triple goddess, who is maiden, mother, and crone, there is the mother who nurtures, who's supportive, who's understanding, and who can follow through on whatever needs to be done, pretty much the way the women in the kitchen did there. Whatever task there was, they bound together and they got it done. And I respected that more than I'd ever respected the role of women, because I'd never really, really seen it. I'd always seen it, but I never heard it expressed by anyone what the role was of this mother, other than to have the baby and take care of the kids. But there was a great deal more my mother did for us than I was able to understand until I played the role of mother. And then there's the crone, the hag, the one that you see, Halloween, that everybody makes fun of and thinks she's god-awful. She can be. That's a part of it. But she's also a way-shower. She's experienced truth. She's experienced life. She's that wise old woman in the village who knows what's going on and who can keep the silence or break the silence. She's not afraid. She's fearless. She understands there's a beginning and there is an end to everything. And there is that space in between, and she's experienced all of it except the very end. She is from the womb to the tomb. That's who she is. And she's fully capable of handling whatever needs to be handled until the very last moment. That's who she is. Now, can she be fearsome? Of course. She is no nonsense. She does not play act. She's very practical. But she also possesses all of the qualities that she had in the past. She also has the capability of being the maiden. She also has the capability of being the mother, whether she had a child or not. And she also has the capabilities of the crone. So she's pretty much no nonsense. And yes, you can fear her. There is a statement that goes, do not fear the dark mother, because she has her own lessons to teach. Now, in one of our rituals, we did a dark ritual. That's not the same thing as an evil ritual. There are some who do those. That was not us. However, this ritual called upon us, and I had a role in it. This ritual called upon us to act as keepers of the gate. And the participants would go through the gate, and at every gate, something was taken from you. Until the final gate, the seventh, and everything was taken. Now, on the day I was to do that ritual, I came home from work and I was thoroughly tired, really, really tired, and thought about not going, but I did have a role to play. Well, when I got home, the house was, well, like our house usually was, with 4 kids in it. And my husband was just worn out. He had retired, and he was tired. And my mother was trying to get the kids kind of together, and the dog had run away, and we had a Rottweiler. So you could hear all the dogs in the neighborhood barking and keeping up noise, and we were getting phone calls about the dog being out. And so I thought, you know, maybe I'd better stay here and try to get this house together. You know, my poor husband and my mother, oh, you know. So I did what I could in a couple of hours I had, and I thought, maybe I'll just stay home. And then my mother said, no, just go and we'll handle this. So I went, and I went through the 7 stages and lost everything. And there was this grief period that you were allowed to have. And so there was weeping and wailing, and some were sincere. And I tell you, I was kind of sincere too. I thought, God, you know, this is terrible, you know. And so afterwards, you were allowed to come back up and regain everything you had. Well, I went home, and that house never looked better to me. It was amazing. It almost seemed to glow when I drove up. My husband never looked better to me. I tell you, well, we won't go into that. He never looked better. And my grandkids, you know, as they had tucked in and they were kind of quiet, but I realized what I had. And I had not given it that kind of thought when I left until I went through that. Do not fear the dark mother. She has her own gifts to give. And so since I recognized what I had, I held on tighter. And I don't ever forget that experience. I don't ever. Now, there was also a part of that where once a year we would choose a goddess to guide us, to teach us. And so being new to it, I did not want to choose one of the more severe goddesses, which the dark mother can be. So I chose Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. Now, how much better can it get? You can't do any better than that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I feel, you know, I can love people and all of that's good. But what Venus is also a goddess of communication. And so as I began to walk through life, all of a sudden all of these people were talking to me. Just people would walk up out of nowhere and just tell me something. And then they'd walk away, and I was like, who was that? And why did they tell me that? And it kept happening. And I kept walking up to other people and talking to them. Just about anything, it didn't matter. I kept going places where normally I would not go, and doing things that normally I would not do. Because Venus opens up avenues. She opens up communication. She opens up people. She makes you open to other people. And you begin to understand on a level that you did not know you could understand. And so there have been others. I chose a goddess after the first year of Venus, and so much contact, I decided to use her again. But it turned out to be overwhelming, because then I was bombarded with people who wanted to talk to me, who wanted to sit down with me. I wanted to talk. And so I finally figured out it was taking too much away from my family life, and I had to cut back on some of the things I was doing. So the next year I chose the goddess Psi. And Psi is silence, but that was the noisiest year I ever had. At the end of that year, we questioned one another about what we learned, and I found out I could get silence in the midst of a chaos. I didn't hear it. I got silence. That's what I learned. It didn't guarantee me I would have a life of silence. It meant I could get silence no matter what.